it's Louise Rodgers again here, and welcome to the second of this series of short videos for Psychologies magazine, looking at the topic how to say no at work and still succeed. Last week, we looked at where the impulse to say yes may come from. We considered some of the external factors that may make saying yes our default position, and some of the things that we may have internalised that make saying no more difficult. I asked you to try breathing through the impulse to say yes, so that you can check in with yourself and see if these inner influences, such as imposter syndrome, are getting the upper hand. Did you try this, and if you did, how did you get on? Now this week we're going to be taking a closer look at the internal checks and balances we can put in place to make sure that we're managing our yes and no responses most carefully. The first of these is saying no when it's the right thing to do. There are some occasions when saying no is simply the right thing to do. Not just because it suits us, but because that saying yes would compromise something much deeper and more important, such as your values or your ethics or morals. Sometimes your gut is your best guide in this situation. If it feels wrong, it generally is wrong. Many of us don't have a clear idea of what our belief or value systems are, and everyone's is different. It may help you to learn more about your own. You can start by asking yourself some questions. What would you not be prepared to do, even if it would help you to succeed at work? What is the kind of behaviour in others you admire? My yardstick was always, will I be able to look at myself in the mirror tomorrow if I do this today? And that worked for me. Try to find out what will work for you. Sometimes saying no is important because saying yes will compromise our boundaries. Boundaries define the emotional and mental space between us and something or someone else. They can be physical and tangible, or emotional and intangible. If you've ever said to anyone, I draw the line here, then you've set a boundary. Boundaries are there to help us. They protect us. They bring clarity to what is our responsibility and what is someone else's, and they preserve our physical and emotional energies so that we can stay focused on what's most important. But setting and maintaining boundaries can be difficult. An example of this may be that you've negotiated to do fewer hours at work because you also have responsibilities as a parent or carer, for example. Technically, your boundaries are in place, but how do you protect them? How do you avoid spending the time when you're not in the office dealing with the emails that just keep on coming, regardless of the day of the week or even the time of the day? The first step in setting boundaries is to be clear about what your limits are, emotional, mental, and physical. Your limits will be different from everybody else's. You can learn to recognise when you've reached your limit by concentrating on your feelings. If something is making you feel uncomfortable or stressed, resentful or even guilty, notice these feelings as they will help you to clarify your boundaries. Think of them as cues to yourself that a boundary issue may be present. If a situation occurs several times and you experience a negative response to it several times, this is an important cue. It may help if you get used to asking yourself, how uncomfortable am I feeling right now? You can try using a scale of 1 to 5 when 5 is very uncomfortable. How resentful am I feeling right now? How guilty am I feeling right now? And so on. If you regularly deal with emails when you're not in the office or not at work, and your scores are slipping regularly into the high zone, say 4 or 5, it may be time to start saying no. And you may be surprised how easily your colleagues will accept that you prefer to deal with unurgent emails at a particular time and not as soon as they arrive, once this has been explained to them. Remember, boundaries are designed to protect you and your overall well-being, and others should respect this. In my last video, I talked about how developing a clearer sense of what we're good at and not good at can help us to choose between yes and no. And sometimes it's right to say no because we're just not the right person for the job. Are we asked to do something that will give us an opportunity to showcase our strengths and abilities? Or is it going to take valuable time away from something that we're good at and that we really want to do well? If you're asked to do something that you know you're really not much good at, then the right answer is probably no. However, if you're asked to do something that will stretch and challenge you in a good way, then clearly the right answer is yes, and only you can tell the difference. So once again, breathe through the impulse to give an immediate answer. Check in with yourself and respond accordingly. You can even try saying, I need to think about this a little bit. Can I get back to you when I have? Sometimes saying yes at work is the only option. Yes to that new project and yes to that new responsibility. Yes to attending that important meeting even though you don't really have the time for it. Other times you need to say no. And when that happens, it's always good to explore whether there's another option before you actually say it. Is there someone else on your team who may be the better person for the job? Can you recommend somebody else in your network or another freelancer who may return the favour one day? Are you saying no because you're genuinely too busy, when if you actually spent some time examining what else you have to do, you may be able to find the time to do it? How well are you managing your workload or prioritising? It can be particularly intimidating to push back if it's your boss who's asked you to do something. In this situation, think carefully before you respond, and if you really don't have any spare capacity, explain why. Something like, I would love to do this and thanks for thinking of me, but I think I really should be focusing on another project right now. This has the added benefit of giving your boss the option to help you reprioritise, because her response may be, this is actually more important and I think you're the best person for the job. The last point is a useful segue into what we're going to be spending more time talking about in the next video. If the only answer is no, how do we say no without compromising our career? How do we say no like we really mean it? Before next week, I'd like you to think about 2 or 3 people you respect or admire for not taking any nonsense from anyone. We all know people like this, but who nevertheless seem happy and successful in their chosen careers. For each person, what do you notice about them? What internal checks and balances do you think they use, and what boundaries do they have in place? How do they exercise this no-nonsense approach? Thank you for tuning in today and enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.